everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne. I'll be your host for this week's episode, and joining me, fresh from throwing himself out of a plane last week, it's our very own Joris. Joris, back safely on terra firma. How was it?
It was amazing, of course. I was super terrified. Yes, it was very exciting, of course. It was not my idea. I'm not a big fan. I actually have a fear of heights, but what's better way than to overcome your fears than by jumping out of a plane in this case? Or, well, this is just one example, of course. It was fun, to be honest. It was short, unfortunately, but it was fun. But yeah. I didn't catch the cold I'm having from there, but as I already apologize nonetheless to the listeners, to the nasal voice. I guess I have a bit more. I caught some cold after the return from Portugal, getting back into the northern Germany weather.
So you'd recommend a skydive then?
If you're scared of heights, especially.
Just out of interest, how long did that take from from plane to terra firma?
Plane to that must have been like 5 minutes or so, literally. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
A lot more time to be up there. I guess in total takes around half an hour, I suppose. But mainly that is being in a plane, pushed and cropped like waiting for your turn to jump and get on heights and get some sights as well. Already, of course, outside of the plane, but yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
Cool.
Yeah, I have to say I enjoyed seeing the pictures actually and the little footage that you'd shared in your socials. It was great. And me and Ben, for everybody listening, far too terrified to do anything like that. So, speaking of jumping off and into things, let's do that in a football sense, shall we now? Let's jump off whatever we're going to jump off here, and we'll start with Matchday 10 in the Pro League, of course, because that's the obvious place to start. What happened this past weekend? Well, Ghent beat Charleroi 2-1. Mechelen lost 3-1 to St Truden. Ral and Zulte Waregem was goalless. Antwerp and Cercle Bruges was 1 each. Antwerp won the Classico 1-0 against Standard. Genk beat Dender 2-1. Club Bruges beat Union Saint-Gilloise in the big topper, narrowing their lead at the top to 3 points now. And Westerlo beat Leuven 2-0. So why don't we start right at the top of the alphabet, A, and let's talk about Antwerp. Antwerp are on my mind amongst a number of things this week, Joris, because we've kind of alluded to a bit of a grey period for them, I suppose, and where that might lead. And at the moment, it's leading to a kind of a deterioration of their form. It'd be fair to say. What they one win in 7 now, I think, and they're just not scoring enough goals. And if you don't score goals, then you're not going to win anything, are you?
Yeah, no, indeed. That's well, I guess technically they're not top of the alphabet, but close to it at least with the A. But yeah, on that side note and jokes aside, no, they're indeed not scoring enough goals. They could have won this game easily, but they didn't. Not scoring goals and then gifting one at the back. There's that's a recipe for disaster, and they are currently. I mean, we've talked about them already a few weeks ago as well. So I mean, maybe we should not dwell too long on it either. But it's only deteriorating for sure, which is a worrying sign for Wales, of course. And as we know, there's anyway some issues with the fans, with the prices rising and so on. But yeah, now they're in 13th spot. They've only scored 10 goals, if I see that correctly. So yeah, that's 1 goal per game, which they now also got. But that's just not enough to win enough games, especially when you give goals away like a Bozhinov, no, that's not the right name. That's another Bulgarian from the past, but gave away the goal there. But yeah, that's really, yeah, like I said, worrying. It's only getting worse. They did sell some of their best players, of course, or arguably their best players at the back end of last window, both at the back in goal with Lammers, of course. And but also, even though he had a bit of a lesser impact over the years, but Balikwisha is gone, of course, and Doumbia as well. So that's a lot of players quality players that they lost, that could bring an extra spark as well, both at the back and in front, um, or carrying them over the line in games like Doumbia with his shot from distance, for example. That could have been useful in a game against Club where like I said, they could have won. They didn't play, massively well either, but they played well enough to probably be able to say like we deserve to win this game. But yeah, but they didn't. Then yeah, it's just it's starting to look very dire. Now indeed, like I said, 13th, and I'm not sure. Okay, they should be a bit higher up in the classification, but not that much, to be honest. Looking at the quality they're bringing currently in comparison to other sides, is my feeling at the moment. That can of course change. And they did a lot of business in the transfer window, of course, but too many outgoings and too little direct impact incoming. Maybe they brought in some good players, that's possible, but mainly they're young and that they are not one, maybe not consistent enough, or maybe two, not at that level yet that they want them to be, and maybe they will be in a few years. So yeah, but it's not looking great for Wills. That's for sure. Even though it's not an easy position for him to be in, given the arguments I just made.
Yeah, it's very interesting looking at this because it was only a week or so ago that Sven Jaks was highlighting the fact that everyone was aware this was going to be a difficult season for them, and it's kind of getting a little bit more difficult. And I just kind of sense a slight atmosphere change around the place, with obviously them not getting results, just a little bit of kind of tension going up, and obviously the fans becoming slightly more disgruntled. There was a banner this weekend that essentially said "We pay, you fail," which was pretty clear, I thought. And Steph Wells was asked about this and clearly didn't want to talk about it. Politely pretended that he didn't see the banner and kind of, reassured the journalists at the press conference that he was pretty certain that everybody was still behind them. But yeah, he looked a little bit tense, I thought, at that press conference. Obviously feeling a little bit of pressure. I mean, they're kind of what we know, they aspire to a playoff one spot. That's their target regardless, and certainly their main target. Obviously, if they can get European football as part of that, then that's an added bonus as well for all sorts of reasons. But at the moment, they're sitting 5 points off a playoff one spot, and that margin of error is kind of operating at fairly maximum capacity. Now you would think they can't afford to drop too many more points and lose any more ground on that kind of current top six before things would maybe be changed. That's one of my cats in the background agreeing with me, everybody, if you could hear that.
Ben is joining in a different form this week.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe my mog's an Antwerp fan, and that's him just expressing his own displeasure. But that's who that is there in the background. One of my three. Yep, there he is. He's just falling out of a tree at the other end. Oh, yeah, you can hear that hissing. It's great. They're kicking off. We've got two of them kicking off. Yep. Much like fans do in the stand. So it's really interesting because I think that margin of errors I was saying is kind of getting smaller, and that maybe explains kind of Ville's tension. He knows that should that gap basically grow any bigger, then there's going to be tremendous pressure on him, understandably as well, because the fans are now starting to express that displeasure. They've got a tough run of fixtures coming up as well. Actually, they've got Standard away. Club Bruges come to the Bossel, and then they've got St Truden away, who are in okay form at the moment as well. So it's not getting any easier. It never does.
No, well, yeah, that's another factor, of course, as well. Their opponent this weekend, Cercle Brugge, maybe we should also quickly segue to them. They also haven't won in the last 5 games, so that's, yeah. And they're one of the few sides that are still behind Antwerp, but yeah, which is worrying for Antwerp, of course, because you would expect them to beat them when playing at home. Of course, also not a good sign for Cercle Brugge. Yeah, for sitting in 14th, 10 points out of 10 games. A bit of a wobbly start as well. Of course, expectations are a bit lower as there, but yeah, they should not stay winless for too long either before really getting into problems and issues. But yeah, at the moment, as you mentioned, the gap is not that big yet. The margin of error for especially for Antwerp is decreasing, of course. But for Cercle Brugge, assuming they're not aiming for a playoff, for a Champions playoff spot, but just safety, it's only 1 point gap as well. So the back is still there, but it's slowly shifting. And they both missed the boat a little bit here. And yeah, will be interesting to see what happens at both clubs as well, of course. And yeah, if either side can turn it around, turn their face around in the upcoming weeks after the break, of course, after international break that we will be having, sadly, immediately after this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Circle there, actually, because while we're on the subject of them, who of course Antwerp played this weekend, there have been indications that, that there are signs of improvement there, but at the same time, there are definitely some issues, particularly at the back. I think defensively they've looked not as solid as they would want to be, and that's the thing that's really caused them more problems than anything else. Their main issue for what felt like forever, as we all know, was, are they going to find a solution to scoring more goals? And there has been an improvement really there. Stephen Gura has started to score a few and looks more settled now. So it's just a kind of balance issue there, because they certainly are playing in a way where they should be getting a little bit more out of their games, I feel. When you look at the form table, I was having a look at this earlier on today, actually, based on the last 5 games. If you take that as a basis, the form sides really at the moment are Union, obviously, and the side that me and Ben spoke about in a bit more detail last week, Ghent. 4 wins in their last 5. Both those two, they're the kind of top performers in terms of a bit of consistency at the moment. Obviously, Club are in the mix there. They're 3 wins in their last 5. We probably should touch briefly on the big topper at the weekend, Club against Union, because quite a rivalry, as we know, has developed between these two in recent years, being big title favourites, and everyone was going to be, all eyes were on this one this weekend as an early indicator of where both those sides are. And I thought it was really interesting, Joris, to hear Nicky Hyen say that they were determined going into this game, that they were really going to give it their all. Because he used the same line with the press, Nicky Hyen, that he did towards, in the playoffs last year, when he said, look, Union have really got nothing to lose, whereas we do, because we're Club Brugge, so we're going to kind of give it all. And I thought it was interesting. He was trying the same psychological approach. But Club probably slightly the better of the two sides on the night, and a certain Carlos Forbes ultimately getting the winner. My question to you is, how many times do you think Carlos Forbes is going to score that goal this season? Because, takes the ball out wide on the right wing, runs into space, hits it early and scores, because he's done that a few times already for Club, and it's becoming a bit of a trademark move for him, I sense already.
If he does it like this, probably not that much, because there was an element of a failure of Scherpen there as well, that he should have saved that ball. But of course, if he performs it in a better way, as he already has done, the goal against Westerlo, for example, of course, entirely different goal in the shot at least, but in the action, you're quite right. Quite. Yeah, you probably score a few like that as well, of course. The first loss for Union in 20 competition games as well, of course. So not even domestically, because also in the Super Cup, of course, Club Brugge won. But that's in the league. That's a first loss in 20 games, so half a league, half a season, of course. And at the same time, also first time since more than 3 years, 11th of May 2022, that Club Brugge won the home game a home game against Union as well. So that's that stat on its own is maybe more remarkable than the fact that it finally happened again. But well done to them, and I think indeed Club Brugge deserve to win here. Union, they really did go for a point here, and they didn't deserve it, even though they could have ultimately have snatched it in the end. Still, just a point, nothing more, of course, but could have gotten what they seemingly wanted. But they didn't this time. But with marginal differences, of course. Definitely, yeah. One of maybe I'll actually segue to my player of the week a bit randomly here as well, because he comes out of this game, and he's a Club Brugge player actually, and it's Stankovic, who really had a really good game in midfield. Won all his duels, if I'm not mistaken. There were not that many, to be fair, but he won all of them that he took, and his passing rate was also really exceptional, which is really good for a defensive midfielder, of course, or more defensive minded midfielder, at least. And yeah, it would have been nice if his free kick would have gone in as well. That's a bit of an old style free kick, and it was a good shot. So there, Scherpen did really a good. It would have in a way it would have been nicer if that one would have gone in and Scherpen would have held the Forbes shot, of course, the short Forbes attempt, and the result would have been the same. But the kind of goal would have been more spectacular, I guess. But yeah, really good save from Scherpen as well. So I'm not only shooting at him, he actually had a decent game all in all. Yeah, unlike many other Union players, maybe even. But yeah, so that was my player of the week. Quickly, already in the mix that I've thrown in here. But just also, of course, if Union would have won this one, they really would have made a gap. Now everything is becoming more like an accordion, and really falling back into each other. And like you said, coming back to 3 points could have become a gap of 9, in theory, on paper, but that did not happen. And all sides in the neighborhood, more or less, on the top, have won, so everyone is closing the gap with Union a little bit. Nothing to worry about, of course. Like I said, first loss in 20 games in the league, at one of the places where you would expect this to happen as well. But yeah, more than the result, the performance from Union was maybe a bit underwhelming on its own. But yeah, it was not a great game all in all as well, to be fair.
Yeah, who'd be a goalkeeper, eh? We all know that they're held to very different standards than other players are for obvious reasons. You know, he was a hero one moment where, a really good quality save, and then obviously with Forbes' goal there is that element of doubt. I mean, I looking at the Forbes goal actually quite a few times. It's a difficult one because you look at it and you go, okay. I think the bounce is the thing that makes that difficult. And with Sherp being such a big guy as well, then it just shows you that even with the extra margins of his size, with something like a bounce, it can catch anyone off guard. So it's a very, very difficult one to put solely down to a mistake. I thought that was a little bit harsh on him this week. He did say afterwards that he's not that bothered about it. The mistake, that is, which suggests that obviously it's not going to dent his confidence at all, which is good, because this happens to all goalkeepers at some point. As well. That's the first time Union have had back-to-back defeats as well. Obviously, if you include the European defeat to Newcastle as well. this past week. First time back-to-back defeats since February, when they lost to Ajax in the Europa League and then lost to Mechelen when they came back to domestic duty as well. So, it's a couple of long runs ended for them actually there, which is going to happen at some point. But, one run ending just means another one can start, and I think that's the best way that you can look at that. You've given us your player of the week already. We might as well go on to mine, because my particular player of the week will allow me to segue very nicely into the team we're going to talk about next in a bit more detail. So my player of the week is Patrick Fluck, who of course now is at Charleroi, formerly of Mechelen. Leaves Mechelen in the summer. Joris goes to Charleroi, where he seemed to be wanted more, wasn't going to get regular game time, or at least couldn't be promised it at Mechelen, chose to leave because that's what he was after. It's amazing what happens when a player goes to a new club and they want to play regularly, and a coach just throws their arm around a player and says, look, go out there regularly, you're my man in that position, go and do your thing. A player relaxes and you start to see the best of them. I've always been a fan of Patrick Fluck. I think he has some real natural footballing ability. His reading of the game's good. I think technically he's a very, very competent player. Obviously, Mechelen just didn't necessarily see the best of him for a whole variety of reasons, but he started really, really positively at Charleroi, I think, which is why he's my kind of player of the week. Aside from the fact that he scored an unbelievable goal this week, of course, possibly a goal of the season. It'll certainly be a contender for it. We don't see many strikes as good as that. It will be up there. Unluckily for him, his side still lost the game. They lost 2-1. But he's scored 3 and 5 since he's gone to Charleroi now. So he's obviously enjoying being in a new environment and knowing that he's going to start games regularly. That's obviously made a difference. So yeah, Patrick Fluck's my player of the week, which, as I was saying, allows me nicely to segue into his former side, who we should talk about here in a little bit more detail. We nearly did that last week. But here's the interesting thing. So Mechelen, who Patrick obviously used to play for until going to Mamburg, have had their best start to the season in 34 years, which is pretty significant. But having said that, they were terrible this weekend. They were absolutely terrible. It's what you would call a complete non-performance. Really, really poor, I thought, against St. Truden. Lucky to get the goal that gave them the lead. Couldn't hold on to it, and then in the end lost the game, kind of quite convincingly, I think. So I suppose we're highlighting the positives, of which there are plenty in this opening quarter of the season. But let's talk a wee bit more about where they're at as a club at the moment, Joris. Because see, when you have a look at this squad, it's a young squad. They've pivoted to consciously pivoted to having a younger squad. It is a calculated rebuild. Tom Calloway, the former sporting director, has come back this summer for his second spell at the club and has very deliberately decided to rebuild the squad because it needed to happen. They've let some long-standing favourites go. Obviously, Jeffrey Harriman's gone to Antwerp. He's 33 now. Nicholas Storm's gone to Turkey. He's 30. Patrick Fluck, just talk about him. He's away to Charleroi, 28. Ahmed Touba, 27, he's gone as well. Dan Foulon, 26, gone to Antwerp. These are players who, close to 30, or at least at the peak of their career, around 60% of the current squad now that Tom Calloway's put together after cleaning it up is 23 or under, which is obviously a good thing. So this is a side that have got younger players who hopefully, if they're coached in the right manner, are going to develop a bit and accrue some value for the club, which is obviously the right long-term approach to have. So the model's definitely right. And they've had, on the whole, as we were saying, a really positive start. We're still not necessarily sure whether they have the ideal T1 in place longer term. Is he the man to really develop younger players? Well, as long as you're doing okay, then those questions won't be asked, but it's just worth putting out there. But in the summer, the 18 left, I think it was, and obviously 18 came in. So you've got a squad of 28 now with an average size of 23 as well. 9 of the 23 or under have an average age of 20 as well. So I think some of the big things strategically are certainly right, and they've had a positive start, and they'll be hoping that this weekend is just a bit of a blip rather than an indication of where things are going to go next.
Yeah, definitely a better start than anyone expected, I suppose, as well. But yeah, really smart transfer business. I think I've also touched on that a few weeks ago as well, like that I was lauding their and praising their summer window and on the whole without necessarily a big standout. Although there are a few players that do stand out, of course. And one of them is actually not a transfer, I guess, but the left 16-year-old left back. I'm forgetting his name here now, but has really impressed. But yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, they're getting some points, of course, helps. 16 points accrued already. That's really yeah, the really good score for Mechelen. Still in sixth position as well. So yeah, that's all going really well for them. Yeah, the game against Sint-Truiden is something else. They indeed they, that they did deserve to lose. It was a miracle that they actually held on until what was it, 15 minutes before the end, and then gave away a penalty as well. But yeah, for that, but a well deserved loss nonetheless. Of course, but yeah, hopefully for them indeed, it's just a blip. Yeah, Lauberbach is actually being quite impressive as well. I know it's your favorite player, but this season he seems to have stepped up a little bit in this game. Yeah, maybe having a manager. I'm assuming that he didn't. At least I can't say that he didn't, but I'm assuming Van der Bies didn't tell him that he can't even score on training in openly in interviews. That might have helped him a little bit in his confidence. But yeah, that's interesting to see. Let's see if they can hold on to this as well, of course, because for example, we don't need to go very much back. Like last season, after match day 13, they were in fourth position, Mechelen. And it's been a recurring theme in some of, not all, but some of the past few seasons as well, like having a good start and then by the end of the season having a bit of a drop of form, because yeah, they at the same time under the same manager, Hazi, of course, they actually dropped down into the quite close to the end to the relegation playoffs spots as well. So that's not entirely out of sight. 16 points will get you there, but it's an encouraging start to the season. And like I said in other segments already as well, of course, having a young squad, yeah, it could mean that the performances could be a bit more inconsistent as well. So that might be a good sign for that next. Maybe there will be a few more games, most likely actually, like last weekend, where they really are off of it. But there will be should also be other games where the opposite happens. Of course, it's more with some peaks and valleys in the season, maybe. And so far, the peaks are very much, yeah, over performing the valleys. And let's see if that, yeah, will if they will this time be able to keep that going. Yeah, it's always a risky bet, I guess, with Mechelen, I guess, like I mentioned, because of, yeah, they have this tendency to fall off a cliff at some point, at least after having a good start. Yeah, which is not the worst for them, of course, as well. And indeed, for the future, for the slightly further away future, I think it's they did really a good business, and they might profit, reap the rewards, yeah, later on. But yeah, hopefully for them, they also can have a really good season. And yeah, I do think they really have the right approach for this transfer window, since it's virtually impossible to relegate, especially also already for Mechelen now. I guess you could, even with the current points tally and being still only 1/3 of the regular league being played. That a lot of things need to go wrong for them to have a chance, only even to relegate, and to build on that with the young players. Yeah, that could be the right strategy. Maybe it could still backfire if they do too well and they lose a lot of them by next season already. But at least they will still be in a good position to reinvest the capital they might get from some of those players for sure as well. Yeah, we will have to wait and see. That's a saying I have to use every episode at least once, and here I did it.
Yeah, I don't think we've used our favourite word, efficiency, so far this week. So I'll just drop it in there randomly without any context whatsoever. Let's see if we do before the end of the episode. Yeah, I mean, I think what you were saying there, spot on, Joris. I mean, Fred van der Beest was saying this week as well that he's very pleased with the start they've had, and why wouldn't he be? But he knows that, things can change quickly in football. He's been there before himself. Because he's been at the club for going on for 5 years or so now. He's been there on a couple of occasions when they have gone off a cliff at certain points in the season. So I think he's not getting carried away, and he's obviously enjoying the positive start that they've had. Bit of news actually coming out of Mechelen today. We know now that their director of football, Jurgen Streppel, has left the club. He was only there for 4 months, so he wasn't around for too long. Tom Calloway, the sporting director, will remain in post. Streppel came in the summer, didn't he, Joris, to kind of oversee the links between Mechelen and their kind of sister club, Hillman Sport, where Streppel was also director of football. I think is the main aspect of his role was player pathways and relationships between the two clubs. But he has left the club today. The club haven't said too much about that at the moment, unsurprisingly. But normally with these things, there is some kind of management or ownership issue that's behind these things. So likely a disagreement about something has led to a parting of the ways. So plenty going on with Malinois at the moment. We should drop down to the CPL now because there's been a few things of interest happening there this week. If you don't know what's been going on down there, we have reached Matchday 9. What happened this weekend? Well, Frank Baran and Anderlecht Futures drew 3 each. Lommel beat Serang 3-2. Club Nxts, who we're going to talk about in a minute because they're still in a sticky spot. They lost 4-0 to Young Ghent. Patro Eisden beat Liège 2-1. Eupen and Molenbeek drew 2 each. Olympic Charleroi lost 1-0 to Lokeren. In the big topper, Beveren won 3-1, and RFC Liège beat Young Genk 5-0. So we probably should start at the top, the literal top, and talk Beveren for a bit. We've been resisting this for a little while in any more detail, mainly because the big topper with Kortrijk was coming up this weekend. I watched this one, Joris, actually, and I was quite impressed with Beveren, albeit 2 of the 3 goals were gifts, really, goals you don't want to concede at that level. I thought they were really good. They were quite positive whenever they went forward, always looking for the right out ball, which suggests there's kind of a good attitude about this squad. And it's not a bad squad either. It's a squad that has depth and a bit of quality in it and probably should be doing what it's doing at the moment. And what are they doing? Well, 9 wins out of 9 doesn't get much better than that as starts to the season go. Beveren fans just beginning to start to get a little bit excited. I've seen on social media. This is our chance to throw the weekly caveat in because we know in Belgium, and I've fallen foul of this myself in the past, you shouldn't get too carried away. We have seen sides go and win their first 10, 11 games and then flunk the rest of their entire season pretty much. So we're not saying that's going to happen with Beveren at all, but let's give it another few weeks before we maybe start to get really excited. Although it would be fair to them to say they've certainly laid down a marker now. They do look I think, a fair bit better than the most of the sides around them, and I don't see too many sides being able to keep up with them. They're going to have a dip in form at some point. We don't know when, but yeah, you can't argue with 9 wins out of 9. I think they've only conceded 3 as well. Scored 21. So the balance of things, all things considered, is pretty unbelievable for the opening. The opening quarter of the season. I mentioned their squad. Let's mention a few of those players in there because some of them are very well known, of course. They've got Leonard Mertens, Christian Bruls, Bruno Godot, plenty of experience there, bit of quality too. Victor Boon, Kurt Abrahams, Guillaume de Schrijver, and Janis van Heck, whose praises we were singing, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, scoring 4 in one game, more in that one game than his entire career up to that point, if you remember. But yeah, I mean, lots of positives for Beveren at the moment, and they're just enjoying the way things are going, the way they should. How are they going to react psychologically, though, do you think, Joris? Because obviously that's a 5-point gap they've opened up now. One of two ways: either they lean into that and enjoy that, or they take their foot off it and it starts to go all wrong from there.
And I would advise not to do that because their next game is the away game against Beerschot, who have a game less. So at least on paper, they could only be 4 points behind. So if they lose that game, the gap is already narrowed to 1 point. Of course, running ahead for Beerschot a lot as well. I'm not sure if we need to watch that game, though. Has a 0-0 written all over it because Beerschot also only conceded 4 so far. A 0-0 or a narrow Beveren win is the most likely outcome based on the goals scored for both sides then as well. But of course, with Beerschot having a game in hand at the moment as well. But yeah, Beerschot, they really have a big chance in the upcoming weeks to do something with their season. They're in third position. I sorry for moving on from Beveren actually, but to Beerschot, because I do think they're in a very interesting position. They play in the next 3 weeks against the number 1, the number 2, and the number 4 currently, of course. But yeah, Beveren at home, then Lommel away, and then Kortrijk at home. Very defining of weeks coming up for Beerschot. For sure, if they come out of that unscathed, then they really are also in a good position. That what that position specifically will be, that's I can't predict, but then they would be in a good position nonetheless to fight for the promotion spots, or probably be in those promotion spots at the end of that streak. When in theory easier games would have to follow still for them again after that. But that's all a bit looking into a glass ball a bit too much. But Beveren, of course, going on a great run and start at the start of the season. One of the goals in there was a bit of a funny one, a bit of a lucky one as well. I guess with the ball bouncing off of the defender and in goal. But yeah, they did make a statement here with that victory, of course, in Kortrijk. So yeah, good start to the season for them, for Kortrijk themselves as well. Still, but they are now already also. They also will be curious to see the result between Beveren and Beerschot. If they win their own game, then they will be the winners anyway, regardless of the results of that game. But yeah, easier said than done. But maybe a bit looking forward, a bit too much forward as well. Yeah. So, but good start of the season for Beveren, and we've blown that horn before. But yeah, you mentioned the caveat. I made it more materialize that caveat as well. I guess a little bit even now, and it, let's see. It really at the moment looks like it might become a race for the first 3 spots between those sides I've mentioned, Beveren, Kortrijk, and Beerschot. But as you mentioned, things can change quickly for one side even quicker than for another, of course. But maybe there could be an unexpected run from behind coming as well. It's not that the gaps are that big yet, even though they're actually bigger than in the Jupiler Pro League currently at the top. But yeah, definitely some good results for Beveren going on here. And yeah, looking more down at the table, I guess there was one side I know you want to touch on as well a little bit. Um, well, because there was some news about them, of course, as well. Who were um, was supposedly, I guess, at least expected to fight for taking be in the fight for the first position, according to the president of the club before the start of the season. And well, they're not currently, and it's quite safe to say they won't. The gap is too big to be that. Maybe they will still have a decent season in the end, but they didn't have a good start of the season, and they won't be fighting for those higher positions, which would be irrelevant for them as well. Of course, I'm talking about Club Nxts here, who are sitting in, what is it, 16th position out of the 17, with only 3 points out of 8 games, and no wins yet, and a painful 0-4 loss against the rivals from Young Gent. Sealed the deal for their manager.
Yeah, Tim Wolf has departed. Me and Ben last week touched on Club Nxts briefly. Ben was asking me whether I was surprised, of course, that Club Nxts were on such a poor run of form and down where they are, down at absolutely the wrong end of the table. They can't relegate, of course, but that doesn't change, I suppose, how you make these footballing decisions. And obviously, there's a gap, a definite gap in the analysis internally between sporting performance and developing players, and something isn't right, and that squad certainly hasn't been responding to Tim Wolf. That was actually, I thought that was quite a decent appointment. I thought when that happened over the summer, I thought, okay, I could get behind that. That makes sense, because of course Tim Wolf was reasonably successful in exactly the same role with young PSV. So in many ways, it was a shrewd appointment, but it hasn't worked for whatever reason. And yeah, that heavy thumping this weekend against their great Flanders rivals in Young Gent, doing for him in the end. Funnily enough, I mean, last season they finished, I think, 6th, wasn't it? So they had a very, very respectable season last year. And I think when you look at the talent that's in that squad, they definitely should not be where they are. So there are things that aren't right, and you can only leave these things so long, really. So I can kind of understand why that decision's been made now. To jolt some life back into a squad that certainly has plenty of ability in it, to be able to compete reasonably well at this level, especially when you consider, as I was saying, they finished 6th last year. So it'll be interesting to see where they go next. You were talking about Beershot as well. Another week's gone by without us knowing the identity of the new Japanese owners. It's worth mentioning that. We did highlight that we were a little bit concerned last week about the fact that the new owners had, the paperwork had been completed, it had gone through, and then there was radio silence as to who these people actually are. Still another week gone by, an absolute, tumbleweed, which I find very, very strange. And the longer that goes on, as I was saying to Ben last week, Joris, the more worried I would be, because there's just no reason for that. And it's the worst possible way to kind of start on these, new ownership adventures, because it just sows seeds of doubt and distrust and all of the things you absolutely want to avoid at the very beginning of a new relationship. So that's definitely something to kind of keep an eye on as well. But there was something you wanted to touch on as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's one game this weekend that we actually should touch on, I guess, as well. That's the Franc-Marais against RSA Futures game, where the latter took went into halftime with a 0-3 lead, but they squandered that, and it became 3-3 in the end. So not a good second half from them, but yeah, a literal game of two faces, as the cliche goes as well. But there was also like at the same time funny, but mainly very, very, very disgraceful scene I've seen on that pitch as well. Yeah, that the player was down next to the sidelines trying to gain some time, I believe. And yeah, the well, okay, me, I don't know the context. I haven't watched this game live, as you can imagine here, but yeah, a player, I don't recall. I think it was actually no, I don't remember from which side. So I'm not gonna put any blame on either side. But one of the sides actually is really at blame, because the one player was lying down, with trying to get some waste some time, and yeah, the then two players from the opposite side came and threw the player into well, over the line, basically. Pulled him off from the pitch and threw him out of the line. It's like, okay, that doesn't happen generally. Yeah, now I'm actually quite certain, given circumstances, that the player wasting time must have been an Anderlecht player, a future Anderlecht Futures player. And then the Framboret players coming with two of them, throwing him off the pitch, quite literally. Yeah, and even though Framboret did get two red cards in the end, I don't think that. I think actually two players got a yellow card there, including the player wasting time. So that seems like maybe not the right sanction for that, but yeah, that a remarkable game. Let's put it that way. Anyway, both in scoreline as in certain events there.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, actually, two red cards, you're 3-0 down, and you still manage to get something out of the game. That in itself, aside from the other bits of drama you're describing there, is quite a story in itself. You don't see that happening too often.
Oh, I have to mention, of course, both of those red cards came after the comeback already. So when it was
Yeah.
already 3-3.
Yeah. I mean, it's just plenty of drama, and that there is always drama at this level. We should highlight that if you get a chance to check out some of the Challenger Pro League at some point, please do that, because there's plenty to see down there, as we know. And I enjoyed the game I saw this weekend. I saw the big topper, as I was saying, between Kortrijk and Beveren, and it was a really decent watch as games go, I felt. And interestingly, there was a really big crowd at the Gildensporen as well, a crowd worthy of a Pro League game. Obviously, this fixture, Kortrijk against Beveren, the not too distance past what was a top flight fixture. These clubs are both reasonably well supported, I think it'd be fair to say as well. But it was just fantastic to see an almost full Gildensporen for that game, because it wasn't too far away from that, and the crowd was actually bigger than even I thought it was going to be. It was great to see good atmosphere as well. So a great advert for football at this level, with two sides obviously who are performing, consistently well, to kind of start their new season. Before we go, Joris, we probably should touch on, you mentioned there'll be no BFP next week because there's another international break coming up. Yes, what's that? I hear some of you groaning in the background. Some will groan, some won't. Not the most exciting couple of fixtures coming up, but maybe a little bit more exciting than the last couple. The Red Devils obviously are playing North Macedonia in a home fixture, which is going to be the Planet Group Arena, which of course is Ghent's home stadium, home of the Buffaloes. And then a few days later, the Red Devils go to Cardiff and the Cardiff City Stadium to play Wales, of course. Do you have any thoughts on the squad announcement? Obviously, the big takeaway really for most people was the return of a certain Mr. A. Witzel to the squad. People wondering what that was about, rightly or wrongly. He's obviously playing regularly now, as Rudy Garcia highlighted at Girona, so he's fit. And performing reasonably well, and as he was saying, has a lot to offer. But yeah, I think that was probably the main discussion point from the squad announcement, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah, it's a bit strange. Can follow the reasoning a little bit. Of course, in of course there are some exceptional circumstances with a few key players being out on that position. And then of course Witzel has proven himself in the past, but also in the distant past, maybe a bit for my liking, a bit too much into the distant past. That his better performances at least came, but yeah, okay, he is getting game time. That's of course seems to be some criterion for Garcia, which makes sense. But that's for example why Sambi Lokonga, who's now finally also starting games again, but only recently, is not with the squad yet. I'm assuming like that's one, of course, that had a big impact closer to my to where I live. But yeah, that to name one. But yeah, it's still a bit of an odd one, but would it ultimately be a big difference, make a big difference? We will have to see. Don't really expect him to play anyway, so maybe to get him into the group, and indeed, these are the crucial games to hopefully secure the top spot in the group, to have an experienced head there, extra. Maybe it helps, maybe not. Yeah, it's I would not have done it, I guess, but it's not necessarily something that will determine a lot. But of course, the focus will lie on there. If things would go wrong, of course, there's an obvious scapegoat there, or an obvious position to look at. Okay, that's looking at it without knowing how the games pan out. Of course, it still could go wrong without having anything to do with Cell. But yeah, it's putting Garcia himself maybe a bit more in the spotlight than he probably should have, maybe in that sense. But yeah, to be honest, and all the time when I say that, things do go wrong, but um, they really should just qualify here. And okay, they can't qualify in this qualification round yet, but they should now claim top spot, and then they should be safe, to take that, to pull that over the line as well. Even though the games have been a bit topsy turvy, one game's been good, the other game has been worse, so far under his reign, under Garcia's reign. But yeah, we will see how everything pans out. But yeah, that's yeah. Looking forward to see if it actually works out in the end. And I don't think him Witzel himself will have a big impact.
And are you expecting 6 points from the two games?
I guess you should say that, but as a Belgian, you never do that. I will be happy with a 4 out of 6, I guess, provided that the point is away in Wales. Of course, that's something that should be enough, then to carry everything over the line. Otherwise, there might be big trouble. Well, big trouble. There might be some the direct qualification is at risk, at least.
Yeah, I think questions would certainly be asked. I'll be a little bit more bold, seeing as I'm not Belgian, and I think 6. I think 6 points is very achievable and doable. And anything other than that, then there'll be questions asked as well. Obviously, the Wales game, in theory, is the more difficult of the two. We'll see if it pans out.
Yeah, and especially with Wales being yeah, a bit of a bogey side for Belgium in the, well, even during the golden generation years. So even though I hate that term, so I hate myself for using that now as well. But
Yeah,
uh,
well,
but but
yeah, it's been
even
a
in the
long
really
time
good
since we
years, they were not an easy opponent and managed to beat them at crucial points in time as well. At times, of course, as people in Wales for sure know.
Of course, obviously, when they played each other not too long ago now, Wales gave Belgium a hell of a game that night. Actually, that was quite a torturous watch for those of us of a Belgian persuasion. Whether it's in your blood or not, that was a tough watch that night. I was shifting about a lot. both up and down during that game. Kind of a good encapsulation of what football does to your emotions, that particular game. Well, that's about it for this week, Joris, and that's about it for the next couple of weeks because of the international break. So whatever you're up to, everybody, take care of yourselves. You do know how to get in touch with us, though, in the meantime. If you want to come after us individually, me, Ben, or Joris, to abuse us or avail us of some of our analysis, you can get us on social media, of course. Please do think about leaving us a little review as well on your podcast platform of choice. That always helps new listeners find the BFP, which is great. And if you really like what you're doing, you can consider donating to our Buy Me a Coffee account, which goes a small way to meeting some of our ongoing production costs here at the BFP. But as I was saying, take care of yourself, everybody. We'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.